Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to Healing Outside the Box. This is episode 157, and I'm calling it My Glass Half Empty, Just Turned Upside Down, a disabled woman's perspective. Today is another episode, like last week's, with absolutely no nutritional value whatsoever. I'm going to attempt to tell you something I find uncomfortable to talk about, and that is what it's like to be a disabled person living in our modern world. Part of me sees this as stepping outside of my comfort zone, because talking about my personal life is, well, personal. And part of me feels uncomfortable because maybe my thoughts about how I survive in this world can change from day to day. In last week's episode, I talked about how I was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy in 1982, and then re-diagnosed last year in 2016 with hereditary inclusion body myopathy, or HIBM. It still falls under the umbrella of a muscular dystrophy type of myopathy, but it is unique because we know the defective gene in the protein that this defective gene makes, or in my case, doesn't make or makes poorly. I then entered an NIH clinical study this past January of 2017 for a possible drug that would treat my disease. It was not a double-blind study, so everyone in the study would be getting the drug. I was so excited in January when I entered the clinical research study. Then I was so devastated last April 7th when I was booted from the study because I was having trouble swallowing the huge pills. I should back up and mention that when I entered the study last January, I was essentially a complete quadriplegic. I could not wiggle my toes or lift my legs. I could not lift my hands or arms. I could wiggle 2 or 3 fingers on each hand and move my head from side to side a bit. My swallowing and digestion were both fine, but my breathing was getting worse, and I needed a nighttime respirator to sufficiently breathe while sleeping. I've been on this respirator for a while, but the backup oxygen that I needed was something new last year. So this was my big chance. 35 years of hoping for a treatment was going to be thankfully behind me. When I arrived at the New York University or NYU clinic on the 20th floor, I was given a starting gate assessment of my strength. They had all kinds of machines. I was asked to squeeze, I was asked to pull, maybe push. Even though I thought I did a great job, I'm not sure how impressed they were. But when I came back on April 7th, 3 months later, I knew that they would find that my strength improved, both in my hands and arms. So I pushed and pulled again, and I found out later that I had indeed increased my strength. And then I opened my big fat mouth and told them that I was having trouble swallowing what can only be referred to as horse pills. Although I'm not sure that those magnificent muscular creatures would have had an easier time swallowing these. At the end of the visit, they all went into another room to, discuss things. Then the neurologist walked into my room, sat down, not a very happy look on her face, and said that they had to boot me from the study because of a risk of choking. Then it was my turn not to be happy. As I mentioned in a previous episode, I was crying for about the first hour of my trip home from New York City to Salem, Massachusetts. Then I stopped crying finally, and I started feeling sorry for myself. Then I started ranting, and I sensed a hint of sarcasm in my rants, which is my unique brand of being angry at the world. No one in particular, just the whole world. Over the next several months I managed to tread water and tried to make some kind of lemonade out of the lemons that had been handed to me, but with varying success. So here we are at the end of December, the time of year when we all drum up the courage to make New Year's resolutions. This is what I'm going to do next Monday. Now, I already know how I feel about New Year's resolutions, i.e., that they don't work. But this year, I just can't help myself. So for my New Year's resolution, I decided to attempt to be a glass half full person. Once again, I'm venturing outside of my comfort zone, which is a glass half full thing to do, I imagine. I am going to try to be a glass half full person, saving the sarcasm for the moment when I get to tell everyone that Trump is going to be impeached. Oh, I'm sorry, our fearless leader is going to be impeached. Now, I just did something that I thought I'd never do. I looked up the Wikipedia definition of optimism. Here's what they say. Optimism is a mental attitude reflecting a belief or hope that the outcome of some specific endeavor, or outcomes in general, will be positive, favorable, and desirable. The term derives from the Latin optimum, meaning best. Being optimistic, in the typical sense of the word, is defined as expecting the best possible outcome from any given situation. So that was Wikipedia. Now, I also found a quote from Winston Churchill on this subject, and I love quoting Winston Churchill. By the way, I'm learning from watching Peaky Blinders on Netflix that Winston Churchill was quite the thug in his early days, but I have to say that the guy could certainly spin a phrase. Anyway, here's his quote. A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. An optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. Well said, old boy. So I'm going to tell you my story of a day in the life of a disabled woman, and I'm going to choose me, and then I'll interject my New Year's resolutions along the way. First things first, it's 8:30 a.m., and my overnight home health aide is heard puttering around my apartment, tidying up and preparing to get me out of bed. 8:30 is a ghastly early time of the day, in my opinion. It's practically the middle of the night. I strongly prefer 9 a.m. as a wake-up time. But if I may quote from Mick Jagger, you can't always get what you want. When I realized that I'm awake, my first thought was, oh God, is it really morning? I have trouble opening my eyes some mornings because they are dry from the respirator air leaking into my eyes, which causes them to dry out, obviously, and sometimes stick together. My aides have been getting me up at 8:30 a.m. because I am a, quote, two-person transfer, and this is done with a Hoyer lift. They can no longer lift me up doing a what is called pivot transfer. This means that the transfer into my shower chair has to get done at 8:30, so the overnight aide can leave at 9. And yes, it takes 30 minutes to get me out of bed. So generally in the morning, I am sleepy, sweaty, grumpy, dopey, etc. Almost all of the 7 dwarfs except Smiley. So my New Year's resolution this year is to say, good morning, every morning, not just some mornings, and exchange pleasantries about the weather with my aides. In this case today, it might be unpleasantries, since it was 1 degree Fahrenheit at 9 a.m. But next week I'm going to say, oh, look how sunny it is. I think this is already starting to work because I'm just thinking about being more optimistic. So there you go. Glass half full, and I haven't even gotten out of bed. Anyway, the Hoyer lift sling that gets me up has 4 straps which go under my body. The top 2 straps go around my upper body, and the bottom 2 straps go underneath my legs. They put the sling underneath me and then hook me up to a machine, and a hydraulic lift sends me soaring into the air, and with the help of the 2 people, I get plopped into my shower chair. My daytime home health aide and I say goodbye to our overnight aide, and we pick out clothes from my closet. My clothes choices are all designed to get them over my head because I can't move anything in the limb category. So it's baggy, stretchy, and it's safe to say not runway material. But starting on January 1st, I will choose from a beautiful assortment of pastel colors and vintage styles. After the clothes selection, my aide wheels me into the bathroom where she empties the bucket of pee and cleans me up. Here I understand that I have a choice. Understanding is one thing, but accepting can be another. I could moan about the fact that I can't go to the bathroom by myself, or I could be thankful that I have an apartment with a huge bathroom and someone to help me with my personal hygiene. Glass half full is a tough one here. My aide then wheels me into the kitchen, where I'm in my glory. Here she makes me my foodie cup of coffee. And by that I mean with organic beans, ground according to my preference at a great coffee place down the street called Derby Joe's. She then cuts up my food into tiny bite-sized pieces and feeds me with a fork. Many of my aides have small children. A few of them, when they feed me with a spoon, have been known to wipe the drippy of, say, yogurt off of my chin with said spoon. The bib strapped under my chin completes the picture. My aide and I will then chit-chat about our families and what's up for the day's activities. After breakfast, my aide wheels me into the bathroom where we get washed up and dressed for the day. I don't have a shower stall that we can wheel me into with the shower chair. What I do have is an open drain outside of the tub where I am washed up by my aide with a face cloth and then literally hosed down and dried up. After I am all dressed and tidy, we head to the computer room, where I am transferred with the Hoyer lift into my wheelchair. My wheelchair is a state-of-the-art power chair. When I got this wheelchair 8 years ago, I had to clean out my retirement and give the company over $6,000 to get the standard capability feature. This feature allows me to stand up in the wheelchair by holding my knees with a knee bolster and hooking up shoulder straps, then pushing on a toggle which brings me into a standing position. As I look back, I could have whined about how I had to blow my retirement money on something the insurance company should have paid for, which I did. I could also have said how relieved I was to be able to have the standing feature, which is the most single important factor that has kept my pressure sore from opening up again. And I have said that as well. Anyway, every morning after I get in my wheelchair, I have about 2 hours on my computer. I read, I write, I obsessively scan my countless emails, just like regular folks. As to how I write text, like I'm doing right now, I've got dictating software and a microphone. Again, just like regular folks. Now this is a no-brainer. I frequently thank my lucky stars that technology has allowed me to write and or procrastinate about writing just like everyone else. After a few hours, my aide comes in to hover and suggest with her hovering that perhaps it's time for lunch. Before lunch, I get strapped into my daily mechanical foot exerciser. This is a $900 foot pedal thingy, worth every penny to me because it does what I simply cannot do. My aide straps my feet onto the pedals, turns on the machine, and it cycles while allowing me to push as much as I can, which isn't very much obviously, but the trying part increases my circulation and reduces swelling. And that's a good thing, as Martha Stewart would say. So you basically get the picture. I'm not going to bore you with more details. Basically, my daily routine is pretty much the same in order to make it easier for both of us to remember. Now, having around-the-clock home health aides can be seen 2 different ways. This person could be stomping on my privacy, or could be a constant companion. Starting on January 1st, I need to choose to see this person as the latter. This person can run and get me a cough drop if I'm coughing or choking and cannot stop. She can also pull a little on a tug cloth that I'm sitting on to adjust my position. The aides do this fairly often because if I'm leaning just a tiny bit, it can affect my breathing or cause cramping. As for the aides, it isn't always that easy because the nature of her job is that I have to tell her what to do all day. But another way of looking at it is that this person has chosen to be my arms and legs in all activities that require them. And having this person by my side allows me to live at home and have everything in my home just the way I want it to be. Something I should be thankful for, and I am. Perhaps if I were living in one of many other countries, I wouldn't be alive right now because it literally takes a village, and a home respirator, and the best skincare treatment for an open pressure sore, and modern emergency room care for a bout of pneumonia, which fortunately only happened once. And if I weren't alive, I couldn't be working on, say, SNAP benefits policy, or working on educational nutrition videos, or school garden projects in Salem, and hopefully elsewhere, or putting out this podcast every week, or making pad thai and shrimp marinara for my parents, and last but not least, occasionally making my family laugh with my sarcastic dry wit. So I'm glad I forced myself to write this episode and talk about my personal life, because now I hear myself say that we can all touch each other's lives in a positive way if we choose to do so. As I sometimes like to say, and on January 1st, or often like to say, we are all one, with a capital O. And if we can all get out of our own heads and have compassion for one another, both here and around the world, maybe it gets easier to see the best that life has to offer. Let's hope so. That's all I have for you today. Be well and stay tuned next week for another episode of Healing Outside the Box.